You're live now.
Okay, thanks. Well, welcome to the October 17th meeting of the Fair Access Committee. We have a quorum of folks here. Nancy Kidd, Derek Longbreak, and Adam Soroka are here. And online, we've got Laura Van Eperen. First line of duty tonight is to adopt the minutes for the meeting, the last meeting. Would somebody want to make a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I thought we'd start off with just kind of not really a report, but kind of a just discussion of the Poolesville Day breakfast. We did have letters that we were going to send, which we did to Aruna, Mark, and Marilyn, kind of follow-up letters. And I also want to just kind of ask you guys if there's any things that you thought were either areas of improvement or things that we might want to include next year that we didn't this year, just, things to kind of think about for next year. So if you have any thoughts, that would be great. And if not, that's fine too. I thought overall, I hope you guys agree that it was one of our best breakfasts. I think we got our messages across. We didn't bore them to tears with a slideshow forever. And I thought the video went over quite well too. So overall, and we certainly had about 90 people. That's a good turnout. So,
So I'm always interested how the interaction goes, and it's pretty far in the past, but if there was any significant conversations or people to connect to follow up with, from beyond the official letters to the
Yeah.
primary folks.
yeah, one-on-one conversations that people had.
Because I'm thinking was it the planning board chair?
Yeah, already
We
was
ended
there.
up that he was interested in talking with you. Is there like a follow-up? Because I don't know what happened with that conversation.
he
Like,
sent-
what other
He
things
did
like
send me an
that.
email, and he asked for the framework for the economic study that we had developed. And he said he would get back to me, but I haven't heard anything since then. But yeah, that did.
Yeah,
that
that's the
happened.
kind of thing I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Is there anything that we need to follow up with that might have slipped from interactions that we had?
Another thing that did happen, now that you reminded me, is that I had a conversation with Dale Tibbetts. And we've been working, this is the third year, believe it or not. We started working on trying to get a sign for the Rosenwald School 3 years ago. Back then, it got derailed by Craig, mainly by Craig Rice. He didn't like some of the language, and it just took forever to get him to agree to anything. But then he's left. So then we kind of started over again, and we have a version that Tina Clark, actually, I worked with her on it, and her I think it's her great-grandfather, Noah Clark, was the leader in the Jerusalem community that actually initiated the effort to get the Rosenwald School there. And he's also, beyond that, a major leader, African-American leader in schools in Montgomery County. He helped get started 2 high schools, Lincoln High School, which no longer exists, and then the school that became, was now the Board of Education's offices. That was another black school that he helped start. So anyway, we had language that incorporated all that, talked about his role in it, the Rosenwald School's role in it, and Tina signed off on it. So we worked on that for a while. We sent it around to different historians to make sure that, people like Knight Kiplinger. And I just got a note back from, and when I talked to Dale, he reminded him, he said, yeah, I'll send you a note. He sent me the draft that Tina had revised again, which isn't that much different than what we started off with before. And I told him, look, I'm not going to wordsmith at this point. As long as the historians are happy with it, it captures the main points, and it certainly highlights the role of the Jerusalem community, which is really important that's noted, that they actually took the initiative to get the school started, and Noah Clark's role. That's in there. I'll send you guys the language just so you have it, but it sounds like we're very, very, very close to getting a sign done. And it's good too, timing-wise, because I just got a note from Knight Kiplinger, where we've been talking about doing an event with Historic Medley District has with Tina, and it would be all about the Noah Clark and his role in helping get African-American schools started in Montgomery County. And tentatively, the date they're talking about is November 14th. So put that on your calendar. But if we have a sign language done, then it'd be great to be able to share that with people at that point. So those are the main things that I remember now from the discussions I had.
In regards to Marilyn Balcom, in the transportation and the flex zone, that was just a conversation the day before. I have down a briefing for Fair Access Committee on this to understand what's happening with the Poolesville as a flex zone. Because you were talking about one idea, I think she was talking about a sort of a different idea and trying to, I don't remember fully the conversation, but I just have a note that that we should brief the Fair Access Committee or have her.
You mean she's working on something different?
No, just so, or you or someone, I just have that note that we should explain
Yeah.
what's happening. We should see make sure we're all on the same page with understanding, and maybe it's also that, WUMCA, other people understand, because the idea seemed to be not understood by everyone the same way, is what
Yeah.
I have written down.
So
The conversation was, a month ago, so.
there was a committee that Ride On had
Yeah.
called Ride On Reimagine. And when it started, Katie asked me to go ahead and kind of take the lead on it, just keep them in the loop, which I did. And during that process, they had an interactive map, so you can actually move routes around and see what impact that it would have on people and stuff. It was pretty good, actually. During that process, though, they mentioned that there are two flex zones right now, one in Rockville and one in Glenmont. And their flex zones basically are an area that's kind of a self-defined area within a town like Rockville, where if you call Right On, they will essentially have almost on-demand service. They try to work it out so the other people are calling that it kind of hits everybody at the same time. But basically, it is an on-demand service. And it's designed to, the reason they call it a flex zone is it's only designed to take you to places within that zone.
Oh.
That's what their flex zones are about. There's two of them right now, and they're not experimental, but they haven't expanded yet beyond that. They're talking about doing it beyond that. When I saw that idea, I said, we need a flex zone too, but it's different. Ours would be this entire Western County, and it would take people to Poolesville so they could go other places. And they actually adopted a version of that in their recommendations, but the flex zone is real small. It's like maybe a mile and a half outside Poolesville. It's not the entire Western County right now. So they like the idea.
A mile and a half outside.
Yeah, I mean,
Poolesville.
WMATA almost does
Depending
that.
depending where you go from the boundaries of it.
Well, Big Woods,
If you go from where Jerusalem is now the new development, then we're.
yeah, and Big Woods is pretty much a mile and a half if you go up that way. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about going to Dickerson, for example. That's way too far away. So bottom line is, at this point, that Right On Reimagine process is not, they haven't have a final report yet. And they've also told us very candidly, we don't have the money to do a lot of these things yet. So even if we do get a recommendation, it's not sure.
But it seemed like that Maryland was willing to work with us and not to make it necessarily a new budget request potentially yet, but to better understand and talk through and see what possibly other solutions, if there's an expansion of the zone,
Right.
at least to get it established, or you've obviously had a lot more conversations about it, but transportation's one of the big things we talk about.
Yeah.
And we presented at the breakfast.
Right.
So I'm not, what do we do? How do we help? How do we engage? How
Let
do
me
we
circle
keep
back
this-
with the project director for Ride On Reimagine first and find out what this timeline is. Lisa, who is the staff director for Maryland, does know about this. She's been in the loop on the filings, and that often happens, the member wouldn't be as up to speed, but Lisa pretty much is. But I do think it's worthwhile making sure that Maryland does know about it, and if we can find out from Ride On Reimagined, are they moving forward with any of these things and what the timeline is, then maybe it is a budget item. But we need to figure that out. So I will take that on as something to follow up on.
One other thing from that meeting, and this might be the wrong place for it, but I'm going to mention it anyway, because since this is a Town of Poolesville committee, but Marilyn was suggesting advocacy for a budget for rural roads as opposed to urban and suburban roads, because what happens is the high-traffic roads get the money and get fixed first. And so rural roads don't get addressed. Example, well, one is the town, Jerusalem Road is an example, but there's the traffic, what do you say, density? The amount of traffic is not enough for it to be prioritized in any way, but it's really bad. So she was suggesting that we advocate in the budget for a rural road
Improvement?
because right now it's just roads, one roads budget, but that there's a carve out for rural roads. So at least some, because then you can, within that, there can be some prioritizing or whatever.
So is that distinct, Derek, from rustic roads?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because Jerusalem is a rustic road too, right? It's both, I
I
think.
don't.
I know the part that's in Poolesville is not, obviously, because it's out of that, but there is a part of it that's in Poolesville. The part that goes by the developments.
Yeah, well, that's what I've heard is people, it's really bad there.
Yeah.
That's
All
what
the
we
whole
remember there,
thing, not
and
just,
I think we're gonna lose our car early from it.
That one, I don't know much
They
about, so we
just
need to,
repainted the line in the middle, which,
we mean
but
to
that's
have-
how it came up, is someone mentioned at the breakfast with her about that. And she was suggesting
it's a good idea.
we advocate, meaning people, not the Fair Access Committee necessarily, for a rural road budget, like, or a carve-out, I guess would be.
Okay.
I mean, it does seem like a fair access issue, right?
Yeah, well, that's
Well, it is-
basically what she was,
I think,
Yeah,
I think one of the things too, I'm sorry to just butt in, I think one of the things also was some discussion about how the road is classified and how much has changed since the road was originally classified
Right.
as a rural road. And maybe in terms of the advocacy, is looking for a reclassification of that road, given all the residential homes that are near the road now.
It sounds like this is something we need to have a discussion really with Marilyn first and figure out what it is she thinks is doable or should be done. And if she has some ideas on how to do that, we can start trying to put together some kind of a process for that. You guys, the town did write,
Yeah.
right, you guys did write a letter, right, Ed, on,
Yeah, we sent a letter, Jim sent a letter out, not too long ago.
Yeah.
Because that Jerusalem Road has been a major issue for a while.
yeah,
And so that's, because and Sarah, you remember, it came up in one of our commissioner meetings recently.
yeah. And that go to the Department of Transportation or who would it go to?
You know, I had to go back and look at that.
Okay. But I assume Marilyn was copied, so she knows about it, right?
Right.
Okay,
And so I'll send you a copy of it.
okay.
It's public information.
Yeah, I think we should follow up on that too with Marilyn. That's a good idea.
Yeah. And then just to let you know, I'm doing double duty. Before we rescheduled the Fair Access meeting, I signed up to work at the concession stand at the girls' senior night soccer game.
Well, if you have to
So
if you're drawn away from your duties and you need to do that, go back to it. We're not going to hold you
Well,
to the meeting.
it's low right now. But you guys can come out because there's a boys' game after the meeting. Come out, buy some food. But all right, so just let you know, I'm here. I'm listening in.
Okay, I appreciate
All
it.
right.
Thanks. That's a good one. That's a good point. So those are both things that we had to follow up with Marilyn on. So
I'm trying to find the letter too. I think he posted.
yeah, and then maybe it justifies either a call with her or something like that. We can actually talk it through.
because that and the flex zone to make sure, see what,
Yeah.
once you know what's happening, to see what she's thinking too.
Okay. No, those are good points. Anything else on the meeting?
I'm just trying to think, yeah, there was the planning commission guy, Bob with Maryland. Is there anything with the state delegates that, because this is the time to talk with them? Because I ran into Greg Wims and he's like, what bill do you want me to put forward, right? So this is the time for that if there's anything related to that state-wise.
Well, actually, I was going to talk about it later, but one thing that did come up with the D15 delegation is Lily called me and said that they're willing to propose a bill to fund the economic study we've been talking about. So, and the way this works is they have a series of bills that they, as a delegation, agree to introduce. And so, in the fall, in November sometime, they have a hearing of they have little internal committees that kind of go through what bills they ought to be proposing jointly. And so sometime in November, they're going to ask us to testify on, why a study like that should be funded. And I mean, Lily obviously is behind it. So I talked to Linda, she's behind it too. And I know Brian is too, so I don't think it's a problem. But also will give us an opportunity to talk about that. So I'll let you know when that's coming up. But that is one thing that came out of it. And there's another thing too, and that is David Frazier Hidalgo asked Jim about any capital projects that we want to fund. And I'm trying to remember what he did. Jim was trying to, I know, it was a pool bubble. Is there a way we could help you guys with a pool bubble? Right now, the problem is that you don't know enough about any kind of budget need for how much it would cost. So right now, we don't really know what to ask them for. But we've got a meeting with Robin Riley, who's the head of the Parks and Recreation. And that's the purpose of it, is to go through that in a lot more detail. We do have estimates from one city, that's pretty much the same size pool we have and how much theirs cost. So, and we've got the actual contract, so we know that was $350,000 for their pool bubble. And that doesn't include labor and operating costs and that kind of thing, just the infrastructure cost. So, that's one of the reasons why we didn't get back to David yet, because we don't know really what to ask for, or what the county itself would fund, and Robin's going to tell us that too.
I was just talking earlier today to Kristen Rowe, who she works at Montgomery College, and she was saying that they have just so many requests they can't keep up with them to use the pool there.
Yeah.
Just from all sorts of groups, and they start at like 4 a.m. and go till late at night. So, I mean, you had mentioned this idea before, that obviously the budget is just asking for money to come in, but I wonder if part of the argument could be about money that we would expect to be returned.
Generate.
Yeah, that was a good, you mentioned that, it's a good point.
This was
Revenues for people
Derek,
using it.
Derek had thought about that initially.
Yeah.
That so.
Like if we could say we have 10 hours a week right off the bat committed pool rental from swim
Right.
teams or.
Right, and it might be like that whoever runs the Montgomery College pool might be able to say, like, these are the groups that we have turned away.
So the swim team right now does pay a fee to the county to use the pool, to reserve the pool?
The
I don't know
current
about the
pool,
swim.
Yeah.
I know the high school swim team goes and they only can practice 2 days a week, and they go to Montgomery College in Germantown to practice, for example. And there's a million schools using it, so I don't know if they get how much time they get or what lanes or
Okay.
things like that, so.
But it sounds like it's more limited than they would.
Well, I
would be
mean,
ideal.
it's obviously it's not ideal to be before school,
Right.
driving a half an hour,
Right.
Yeah.
then driving a half an hour back. It's enough people complain about coming for the magnet programs one way, but if you're going both ways before school,
And swimming in the middle.
and swimming in the middle.
Yeah. So it might be that we could make a case for how much annual revenue would be realistic to expect.
Yeah. The other side of it, though, is, and when we went down to take that tour of the bubble being put up, Shauna, I forgot Shauna's last name, but she's an aide to Robin. She went with us. And her first comment was, this means not just 3 months out of the year funding staff, it means a year.
Right.
Which is a lot more, a lot more money.
Right.
Also, the way bubbles work is you have to have the air blower on all the time, obviously. So that's electricity that they're not using right now in the wintertime. And the pool has to be heated.
That's my question is, Is
Yeah.
that 350 cost, is that the heaters and everything?
Yeah, heaters, all that stuff is included in that cost. Yes, the blowers, the heaters, but all that's.
But not operating.
But those are operating expenses that now they don't have. Because this pool's not heated, my understanding is this
No.
one isn't.
No.
So, yeah. So anyway, I mean, there's
don't-
obviously
I
some
don't-
costs here that operating costs would be more, probably.
So once we find out what the operating costs are, then we could kind of work on seeing how much of that we could count on
Right.
reclaiming.
It's a good, it's something worth raising.
People are driving from here to Olney to go to swim practice for year-round swimming. So people will drive a long way to swim in a pool as well, so.
Yeah. Okay. Those are good points. So that kind of took up the pool bubble update already, but that's okay.
So have you done a cost analysis of what it would cost to build a indoor pool?
No, have not. I have no idea.
I know it's more. I already know. I know it's more, but really,
Yeah.
you think about it. Okay, if we're gonna ask for X amount of dollars, what does Y get us?
Yeah.
So
I think one of the reasons we haven't gone that route is the capital budget it takes, the planning for it and all
Yeah,
that stuff
takes
takes
a long
so
time.
much longer.
oh yeah, exactly.
This could be done pretty quickly. And the other side is that a lot of people have told us, I like the idea of a bubble, but I would love to have it open in the summer. In other words, not enclosed all the time.
That's what I'm saying. If you still kept the outdoor pool, but could you build an indoor pool for swimming,
Yeah.
for the
Yep.
purpose of swim teams,
Yeah.
swim practices? You
You also need the space, right, you need
Correct.
land for that, and
I don't know how much land they have up there.
17 acres, but most of it, not all of it, is usable because it's actually in a swampy area.
Correct. Yeah.
And they already have used a lot of it for parking, but you'd probably need more parking if you have year-round pool with activities and events. Right now, you don't have that many except in the summer, so.
Right.
So the answer is we haven't really pursued that in part because we just thought cost-wise and getting it through the budget-wise, it would be a lot
Right.
easier to do this. And plus, the more we looked at it, the more feasible it really is. These guys have been doing this down at the pool bubble we saw for 6 years now, and they've had they've had a tear in the fabric one time because there's a door and at the end of it where you come into it, and if it's not inflated completely and you open the door, you could rip it. Well, somebody did that when it wasn't. Other than that, it's been almost indestructible.
Well, the county uses bubbles over at the, outside the Germantown Aquatic Center for tennis. So they know how to operate or
Yep.
have experience with that.
same idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only difference is those are permanent. So this one, you got to know how to take it down and put it back up. And honestly, I was surprised about how fast it went after. The hard part is you need 20 people approximately. They got to be pretty strong people. And you literally pull a tarp over this thing and you tie it down and you walk on the water. Done. And that's how you pull the whole thing off. And here you get 20 heavy men pulling this thing, and it was no problem. Once they got it pulled, then the inflation process and all that, we only took 8 people at that point. So all you need is for an hour, you need about 20 people. After that, you can do 8 or 9 people, and that's fine. So I think it's doable. And they certainly have had no problem with theirs after they started doing it. This is the second generation. The first one they had, it wasn't so much that it was any maintenance problems. It was just much heavier than this is. Apparently, this is a lot lighter, which, I find that hard to believe watching how hard it was for these guys to pull it. So I think it's really feasible. I think the thing is that our county has never done this before. So their initial reaction from Parks and Recreation was, we don't do that because it's not really that feasible. And we're finding out it is feasible. So our job right now is to try to convince them it is feasible and it's not that expensive and it's worth doing.
Well, sounds like we have one piece. We have the capital cost.
Right.
Roughly.
Right.
But we need to figure out, maybe help them figure out or get that from them what they estimate operating costs to be.
Right.
And then if we can start figuring out after that if there's potential revenue, if there's even a go-ahead at that point.
Right.
that can be part of our argument to push
Yep.
or to advocate for the operating costs.
The nice thing about the way the budgeting process works is the capital budget and the operating budget are two different animals. So we don't really have to know all the operating costs. The only reason we have to worry about it is because that's one of the reasons that they would not want to do this, if they thought the operating
Right.
costs were really too challenging.
Right, I mean, I wouldn't, if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't vote for it in the capital budget unless I had confidence that we'd then be able to.
Right. And that, right now, Shauna's initial reaction was, there's a lot of expenses here, is what she said.
But someone who's operating a pool is, the county is not thinking entrepreneurially or not thinking about revenue.
Right.
I mean, that's part of the flaw in the model. So they just run the pool and they don't care if it loses or makes money.
Right.
I mean, there might be the highest up person cares about that, but the people running and operating the pools, they just know it's a loss. They're getting funded by the county. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, maybe they just need a numbers of people and not even revenue. I mean, I don't know, but
Okay. Anyway, after tomorrow with Robin, I'll be able to get back to you guys with a lot more details about how they reacted so far. And I assume, right now, it looks like one of the things that makes them more attracted to this model than they otherwise might be is because the town might be able to provide some support in terms of both labor and maybe even help in terms of like building a storage facility or whatever. So that's the kind of thing we have to work through with them. Ultimately, you'd have to have an MOU, I'm sure, to work all that out, but, so,
it's all doable.
yeah, I think so. Moving on, to, just quickly on the listening session with the county executive. As you know, there was one that we all went to a few weeks ago, and we prevailed on him to come out here to do one. He said, I can't do it in October because all the listening sessions are kind of jumbled then, but he's going to do it in November. I'm hoping that this listening session, I'm gonna try to style it as not just about the budget, but also about the needs of the Western County, so he can hear more about. So a lot of things we heard at the listening session, inviting those people to come to it so they can talk about some of these things for him to hear directly would be good.
Do we have a date for that?
Not yet. We haven't approached him yet because he's still doing listening sessions, but we are going to get back to him as soon as it's over and try to get something scheduled in November before Thanksgiving.
And does it, I don't know if this is like too scripted or not, but, you know, would it make sense for us to make sure there's sort of somebody to talk about each of the key priorities that we want him to hear about?
It would certainly be good to reach out to them again and say, hey, you came to our listening session, but it would be great for him to hear it too. And he's coming up here, so, you know, like Charlotte was here and Bob was here and Ann Connor. I mean, those people all came, so, yeah. We should obviously reach out to all the community leaders we know and try to get them to come out to it. I'd love to have 100 people there that night. So,
That's what would be key.
yeah.
Because if we could get that, that's as many people as the
Oh, yeah.
town.
That's kind of a stretch, but I'd love to get, at least 50 would be great. I mean,
No,
mean,
that'd be great. I
Yeah.
mean, that's, keep Poolesville's reputation of
yeah,
advocacy.
I mean, that could be our real challenge, is just like rustling up people.
yeah.
Because I think you're right, even if all the issues aren't necessarily raised, it's like just seeing that there are a lot of people who care and need
That's
things here.
right.
Would be very,
Absolutely.
we should be able to rustle 100 people.
Well, I also think in terms of bringing people in, it should be a mix, not, you know, so not just the community leaders, but a mix of youth as well, youth, different ages,
Yep.
different seniors, so you can get a true reflection of the community,
Right.
as well as not just Poolesville, but some of the neighboring communities as well, because it benefits the whole western community.
Yep.
So that's something to think about with our outreach.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, with the community list I have, there, everybody, including the Barnesville, it's the Citizens Association for Boyd's, Sugarloaf. I mean, we've got all those folks on the list.
Yeah, but like at the Germantown one, there was a group of students from Montgomery College.
Yeah, students would be good.
that
Absolutely.
got brought by a teacher. There was a couple nonprofits that brought students that they serve. So
Yeah.
it's
I think
You have to mow.
a ready target also is the Poolesville swim team. Okay, that's a group that will use it,
Yeah.
and so having from the high school and then some of the younger kids that would want to be able to swim but can't get up and do those 5 o'clock in the morning times.
Okay,
Okay.
Yep.
So once we get that date, then we can
really target it,
try to.
yeah. All right, I mentioned already the Ag Reserve study update. That's the D15 delegation point I raised earlier, and when I know a date for that, I'll let you guys know that too. I think it was Derek who raised it about the high school fields. I wanted to get back to you on that. I've done a deeper dive on it. Jim and I met with the principal last year, I guess it was, and went through a whole bunch of issues, including he gave us a list of things they're asking the county to do for the field, because one of the things we complained about it when we got the $130 million was that they didn't do anything for the fields at all. And in Seneca, they did everything. All new fields, everything was brand new. In our case, the fields were kind of left to, okay, that's future. So he gave us a list of things, and one of the things on there was the football field. And so I went back and talked to him about it, and basically what it looks like right now is that according to him, the irrigation system definitely needs to be replaced in the football field. There is a county policy where they're trying to put artificial turf in a lot of the fields, but he's not sure that our field, the way it's configured, and I guess some of the problems he mentioned about the water and things like that, apparently it may not be ideal for artificial turf anyway, and there's a split. I can tell in talking to the PTA about whether some people want artificial or not. He said regardless, the field definitely needs to be completely upgraded and redone. There's no question about that. I asked him if he thinks that they are making progress on getting that done, because, he goes through channels, they all do, and asks for the upgrades they need and so forth. And he said, right now, there needs to be upgrades on the stadium, field, irrigation and grass, stadium, bathrooms, concession stands, and at this point, there is no real path forward. They don't have any agreement or commitment from the county to do any of those things at this point.
I just know, beyond the athletic director being very much in favor of this, she had to reschedule multiple games, at least just in one sport, field hockey, to be home games at other fields for
Because it
us.
just wasn't
Because the
tenable, the
field
conditions.
was not in good condition. And you're sharing the field with in the fall with at least 4 sports. So I know the the environmental and reasons like that.
Right.
It also, in particular, there's trade-offs, right? Maybe for football, grass is better, is safer. Field hockey, it's more dangerous. There's some trade-offs. But the athletic director has to do more work. So she's saying, she's a strong advocate, so I'm passing that on.
Yeah, I've talked to her too, and
And yeah, if you're having home games not at your own field, that's
So the real question is, we've got a lot on our plate already.
Yeah.
Is this something we want to take on? I think another way to approach it is for us to go to the PTA, and I would assume, and Ed, you know more than I do, but I would assume the Booster Club is also pretty well informed about all this, and maybe we meet with them and say, what is it we can do to help you in your advocacy to get this done, and the principal. In other words, we don't take the lead, but we provide support.
I agree with that. I think if you go through and you sit down with the leadership of the Booster Club, they can give you the things that happen. Now, I'm part of the Booster Club, but there's a lot that the Booster Club does to supplement. And so when we look at what we talk about fair access and fair share, there's definitely a great idea link. And then just piggybacking on what Derek said, there's some games that are rescheduled as homes at other fields, but then there's some games that are canceled. And so when you look at the games that are canceled here in Poolesville, that's not fair to the athletes. That's not fair to the ability to raise money, because you don't have a gate, you don't have fundraising opportunities at other schools. And we have, just this past season, a number of games that got canceled, where other schools had better fields, they were able to continue with their games. So that's me speaking as a soccer dad.
So what would you recommend in terms of going forward on this, Ed? Should we try to set up a Zoom call or something?
Yeah,
The Booster
I
Club
think the
folks?
next step. I think the next step is that we either do a Zoom or we just we set time aside and invite boosters to come over, meet with Fair Access,
Yeah.
listen and see what they have to say, and then after that, maybe involve PTA.
Right.
But when it comes to the athletic piece, I definitely would say the boosters. There's about 4 or 5 folks who lead boosters, and we could easily set that up.
Okay, so we may just do that at town hall or something and have
Yeah, I think do something at town hall, because what's getting ready to happen too is with the basketball court, we won't have a home court for basketball games, and the football season will be over in a few weeks. But I guess what we're thinking about getting in on a budget cycle, maybe sooner rather than later.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does it make sense to
So
have
would you,
Mr. Brothers there too, or?
would you like me, Larry, would you like for me to talk to Daniela, who's president,
Yeah, I
about
think
putting something together?
everybody agree with that? Yeah. Did you have a question, Nancy?
I was just asking if it makes sense to have Mr. Crothers there too, or is that not?
Yeah, I mean, I think he could be there too. He could get the invite. If he shows up, that's fine.
Yeah,
If he doesn't, we can get informed.
Yeah.
So that way we're operating in transparency and good faith.
whatever discussion we have and the kinds of ideas would come out of that, we certainly have to sit down with the principal and say, here's what we're thinking about,
Yeah.
and see what he
I think we invite him to the table.
That's
I mean,
okay.
and that way we're up front with everybody.
Okay, that's
All
fine.
right, I'll work on that.
Okay,
Okay.
good idea.
Yep.
And thanks for raising it, Derek, I appreciate it. We already talked about the pool bubble. Another thing I wanted to cover, at the listening session, Sarah and I were talking about the Up-County Citizens Committee, which, Advisory Committee, which meets periodically, and they were the ones who helped sponsor that listening session. Well, we used to have a member on there from our area, Amanda Franklin, who's the coach for my granddaughter's soccer team. I didn't realize she resigned. So I thought we had a member on the committee, and we don't. So now I looked at the list, and there are 3 from North Potomac, 3 from Germantown, nobody from any place, Dickerson, Barnesville, nope, no place up here at all. There's somebody from Boyd's. I'm not sure how close they are to this area of Boyd's or the other part of Boyd's, but anyway, so it got me to think about, and I've been doing this kind of informally, but we probably should do this a lot more strategically, looking at advisory committees and when they come up, trying to see if we can get somebody from our area to consider putting their name in the hat. And I'd be happy for one of you if you wanted to take it on. It's not that hard. There actually is a weekly list that's on the website. I'll send you the website link, and you can see which committees are open and what seats are open and what kind of people are, because sometimes they have skill sets they're looking for specifically, but sometimes it's just citizens. But if one of you want to take that on, I'll send that link to you. And the only thing I'd ask is if you just let me know if you are doing that, because obviously I'll try to push it when I can with not only locally, but also with commission or council members and stuff like that.
What do you mean by take on? Like
Well,
finding people?
be the one to kind of
Or
monitor
us
this and
to-
say, I see looks like this is one we, some of they have nothing to do with us. Some of them are from down county, for example, don't really involve us. But some, like there's one, I just sent out a Facebook post on it for youth, it was a youth advisory committee. There are 2 youths on it already, so there's no seats open there, but there are 3 citizen seats, and they're basically a advisory body for youth policy for the county. So that's important. So, it'd be nice to have somebody on that committee.
So you just want somebody to monitor what?
Yeah, and if you
what's
think we
coming
ought to be
up.
pushing this and we should post something and try to send out notes to people, or if there are people you think we should be approaching,
I mean, if you tell me how to find that, I'm glad to
yeah,
keep an eye on it.
Talk a little bit about it.
yeah. Yeah, I'll send you the link. It's pretty simple.
Okay.
And Marilyn Balcom will periodically in her newsletter,
Yeah, the last one.
Yeah.
she'll also do that and
I-
say, there's because she's been trying to do the same thing, promote that.
Yep, and there is someone that WUMCO successfully, or asked specifically, to apply to an advisory board. I don't remember the name. That has to do with healthcare, and involves the consortium of hospitals in the area.
Yeah, I do remember that now that Katie mentioned that, yeah.
So if there's some particular identified things that, because there's so many.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot.
But if there's some
Yeah.
particularly identified ones, like we have had the Montgomery County Health Commission, there's a Montgomery County Health Commission, and one of the commissioners has Poolesville as their responsible area. And so we got him to come and visit, like WUMCO, and talk with them. So there's other pieces too. Like, I just don't even know all the committees and how they work, and it's just sort of happenstance who you run into. And you could be represented in Poolesville by someone who's lives in Tacoma Park.
Yeah.
You know?
And I didn't even know it, but Martin mentioned the other night that his wife is actually on the advisory board for the libraries for the county, so.
Yeah, I know that.
Which is
will-
good.
Yeah.
Good to know. So, anyway, that would be great. And there's also, Nancy, on that same website, there is a list of all the committees that the county has, which, as Derek said, is, twice as long as my arm. But it also, every month, will list all the new openings that are up, and then also what criteria it is they're looking for, what kind of people they're looking for. So, if you see something you think this is really important because we care about health or because of transportation or anything like that, hey, we should be doing something in that. Let's see if we can get somebody to be on this committee. So, I didn't have this on here, but today I was just thinking about it, and it's something we really should put on our radar screen. I haven't got any ideas yet, but the 4th anniversary of White's Ferry's closure is December 28th this year. And I haven't thought it through yet, but I did get a text from Fran Murphy from MyMC Media, and she's planning to do a big special, 4th anniversary closure thing, which is good. But I think we ought to be looking strategically about what is it we should do, if anything. I don't know that a rally would work again, because at this point, there are probably a lot of people that are kind of resigned to our fate and probably like, what good is that going to do? We did it 2 years ago, so maybe that's not the right answer. But other things are worth thinking about, so put your thinking caps on, and we ought to start figuring out, is there something we ought to do before the 28th? Or actually, obviously that's during the holiday week, but to commemorate that, or to make sure that people remember that it happened. I know Laura and I talked a little bit today about the media, so a big piece of that obviously would be the media, and Laura will be working on that piece. But I don't know, Laura, is there anything else on that you wanted to mention in terms of the White's Ferry piece for media?
Well, I think an economic angle with the hardship that it's been for the business community, I think that would be a compelling angle. And obviously, if there's any sort of movement, on either side of the river, because I think we will be crying wolf unless we bring new information to the table this year. Yeah, other than that, we'll wait for what, the committee decides to organize, but, the voice of the business community that continues to suffer, but, is pressing on, that could be a piece. So.
Yeah. The other point I'd make is that, for the last, actually till now, we've pretty much done all we can to put a spotlight on this continuously, so the council knows it's important, so the state leaders know it's important, and so the Department of Transportation continues to engage. But the reality is it hasn't worked. So at this point, I think if we just say, they ought to make this happen, they should negotiate an agreement, it's going to fall on deaf ears. So what's different? What's going to change just because you guys are acknowledging this and saying it's 4 years? So what? I think to me, that suggests we got to be probably firmer in what we say. And I really don't believe that anything's going to happen unless the county or the state takes over the ferry. For two reasons. One is we don't want it to happen again. And second, I think that gives the county a lot more leverage with Loudoun County in the state of Virginia, because now they got a partner government that wants to make something happen. And I think the only way anything on the other side of the river is going to happen is if they decide they're going to use every tool in their toolkit to do something. And I'm not going to say eminent domain has to be done, but I think they have to be willing to be firm and push on that as well if the landowner's not going to deal. So I think we have to be willing to say things like that. Otherwise, what's changed?
We've played nice for so long. It's time to play hardball, realistically.
Yeah, well, we have plenty. We've been cooperative, we've been firm, we've constantly said this had to happen, and we've got a lot of media, which for a town our size is pretty amazing, but it hasn't worked.
Right.
So, anyway, put your thinking caps on. If you got ideas, that would be great. I mean, we actually had a thought, Jim and I did not too long ago, maybe we actually have a caravan that goes down to the county council and goes, because they're actually on a block that's actually a big square, so you can actually go around and around with cars, but I'm not sure that makes sense either. We were just trying to think outside the box. How do you get some media attention and visibility and also put pressure on? So, honestly, at this point, though, the council, I don't think they really are relevant. They can't do much. It's got to be with the government doing it. It's either the government takes it over because it's been, the landowner said, I'll donate it. And he's made a caveat, but I think if I was in their position, I'd say, you know what? You just got to donate it. Get out of the way. We'll deal with the landing issue. That's on us, not on you.
So this is probably a stupid question, but what level of government are we talking about taking it over? Like, I know that Aruna had been saying that she was
Right.
behind this. Should we be advocating at the state level? Or,
Well,
I'm not sure.
that is a state road, so maybe ultimately it has to be the state. Now, the county could do it. There's no question.
That's what I'm trying to think about, is what, like you said, what can we do now? What avenue can we pursue that's different? What avenue or argument that's different from what we've been trying? So have we been mostly working at the county level?
Yeah, mostly.
So
We certainly have, we had Paul Wiedenfeld, the Secretary of Transportation, actually did, after our rally, actually was on 2 calls. We had this committee it met periodically that David Frazier Hidalgo organized. And we get on those calls and they talk about, the latest events or latest negotiations or whatever. Not a lot of detail, honestly, which is one of the things that really has been a problem here, is they really haven't treated Poolesville as a partner. And they should have, honestly. We're not only the most directly affected jurisdiction, they are elected officials. They deserve to be part of the process, but they haven't been. So at this point, I don't know that there's anything we can do except basically say, look, if the government doesn't take it over, it's not going to happen. You've got to step forward.
So, Aruna made the, public declaration about it, right?
Yeah.
At the breakfast.
Pretty straightforward.
So would it make sense to reach out to her and say, what could we do to actually, with you and your administration, make this happen?
Well, I circulated a letter so we did send that letter. And at the end of it, it does say,
Yes.
the state needs to look at this more strategically than it has. You look at this as just opening a ferry, but it's not just about commuting. It's about history, it's about culture, it's about actually growth, because the C&O Canal is a pretty big park. It actually gets millions of people every year, and that, if it was looked at strategically, could be a part of the state's tourism activities, if you really thought of it that way. So that's what we put in that letter. I haven't heard anything back from her yet. I also sent a copy to Paul Wiedenfeld, the Secretary of Transportation, and his deputy, who I got to know during the rally, and she hasn't responded either, but I am certainly going to follow up and say, hey, we got the letter. Is there anything we can do to follow up or not? But anyway, if there's anything else you guys can think of beyond that, I think even Laura would admit that the media attention has been, amazing, but it really hasn't resulted in changing attitudes.
Hey, Ray, I think, because we focused the last 4 years on the impact to Poolesville, the impact to Montgomery County, but when we look at the other side of the river, what are the pain points for them? What is the benefit for them? Because the way I'm seeing it is that I don't see that pressure on their county council at Loudoun County, where it's as important to them as it is to us. And so while we might be upset as we are, the question goes back, who's upset on the other side? And how do we build on those pressure points to come up with a new strategy?
If you have an angle there, Ed, I would love it, because we reached out, there's a bicycles association over there we reached out to. They weren't willing to spend a lot of time on it. We talked to their Chamber of Commerce. They told us it was 13th on their list of, 15 issues, so it's not a top priority for them. We talked to the mayor of Leesburg quite a bit. It's important, she said, but, you know, when you think about the impact on Costco and Target, I mean, they don't notice the fact that the ferry's closed. We just haven't found, and there's no commuting group that we can find, and, you know, a group of commuters that are over there saying, you know, we'd love to be able to drive to our jobs in Montgomery County, but we can't. So if there's an angle there that you could find, that would be great, but we haven't found it. And I can
Well,
tell you, a
so
meeting with the
I
council
remember-
members, they just don't care. Most of them just, it's,
No, the council members don't care, and so we're in the hunt together, but I think that's really the missing link that gives leverage,
it is.
is making sure folks on the other side, because no matter how upset or how vocal we are, we don't make the decisions on that side of the river.
No,
So we gotta have folks on that side, and even if it's recalibrating, building relationships on the other side, to find an entry point to even some different kind of negotiations. That's really where I think the strategy has to move toward.
yeah, I just wish I could find something, and we've tried, but
Yeah.
if there's an angle that I haven't thought of, that'd be great.
Yeah, all right, so we'll continue to put our heads together.
Yeah, please
I see,
do.
I see Niles is looking at his watch. Is our time up now?
Yeah, it's almost 7:30, so we've been doing it an hour or so, so.
Yeah.
Well, again, I mean,
That was in no way that. My daughter is in her room, and I have the camera on here, so my
right.
apologies.
No problem.
again, this is a naive question, but I do wonder also if going to the state level would help on the other end too. So like if we got the governor of Maryland's office mobilized, they could be mobilizing at that level
Yeah,
across the river too, if we're not having luck
yeah.
at the local level there.
You're absolutely right. And when Hogan was governor, we thought with 2 Republican governors, we might have, but they basically blew us off. They didn't even respond to the letter we sent. I called them, their office, and they said, you know, look, it's not a priority essentially, so. Westmore and, well, Runa Miller, I think reflects the administration's belief that this is important. The trouble is, hasn't resulted in them doing anything specifically as a result of that. Saying it's a priority and doing something are 2 different things, and so far, nothing's really happened. So how do we break that logjam? I don't know. Getting her there was important as a start, but, and proposing, again, that they look at this strategically and think about this, because the Tourism Bureau actually does think the C&O Canal is important. That's why they did that study on the canal, why it brings a lot of revenue into the state. So I just don't have any other thoughts about how to get her engaged other than the way we did. And
I mean, I guess, I don't know how close your relationship, I mean, it seems like you guys were,
Runa, we have pretty good because she was our delegate.
right, so, I mean, maybe we ask her, because, the fact that like Hogan and others weren't getting engaged a couple of years ago, I mean, really was a different situation a couple of years ago, right? I mean, the expectation was still that things could get worked out and
Right.
through
It was a different
local
time, yeah.
channels or through, right? I mean, I think, now you could say like, okay, there's nothing that's working of these, we've done X, Y, and Z, and we've thrown in the towel. So it seems like the only way this can be done is if you help us. Is it realistic that you might do that? And if so, what would you need from us to make the argument?
Yeah.
If we needed to collect some kind of, I mean, I know you've already collected a lot of data about
Right.
economic development and environmental impact and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, I mean, she just might be able to tell us if she would be best equipped to tell us what could be done, if anything, or to just say, don't waste your time, we're not doing this.
So one thing I can do is to follow up with her deputy, who, again, we got to know through the rally, and just say, look, we sent the letter. Is there any prospect that, 1, we'll get a response, and 2, that there be some action that we can start working
Yep.
with you on? See what they tell us. So I can do that, certainly. I just wanted to give it, it's been only a week and a half since I sent the letter,
Yeah.
so.
Well, this is where the 4th anniversary comes in, right?
Right,
That's a reason
right.
to write again.
Honestly, we haven't, I mean, we've gotten a lot of media, but honestly, most of it, I would say, like my MC Media and those, are mostly county media, not anything national or statewide. So if you don't do that, nobody's going to notice it much. I mean, we sent it around, obviously, and tried to get people to take a look at it, but it's not the same impact as if you had like a Fox News piece or something like that, so.
Yeah. I mean, that's making me think too. You know, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just kind of thinking out loud, but I wonder if there are some national organizations that would care about it from the historical, cultural perspective, that could mobilize it at that kind of level.
From the what standpoint?
Kind of the historical, cultural
Historical,
kind of perspective. You know, there are national organizations that are looking at things like that around the country.
Right.
I don't know that landscape that well. My husband might. I'll ask him about that.
Yeah.
But I mean, there are other people, plenty of people who do. You know, I'm trying to think about something where there could be a sort of national interest in this.
Right.
About the C&O Canal Trust. They have a huge network. They have people that guard every mile of the trail, and they have.
And we've got a guy, John Wolves, who's part of that, and so far, that hasn't really, I've been to a couple of meetings that and we've talked about it.
Yeah.
But nothing's happened yet.
riding on the trail.
So,
But yeah, maybe national organization.
yeah. And getting a member of Congress to take an interest in it on the standpoint of it's a big part of the park itself. It's really it's a living history example of what this area was like. Could be good, but so far, I mean, David Trone's leaving. So whoever comes in, maybe that's another option, but so that's after, after the election, so. But, assuming that depending on who wins, we could certainly sit down with them right after the election and say, this should be a priority.
Yep.
And both of them know it, because they were at both Neil
Right.
and April were there.
Right.
So that might be an angle too.
I'll ask around and see if I can.
Yeah, that could be an
do
angle,
something
sure.
at the national level.
And Nancy, you might want to talk with John,
Uh huh.
who's on the, who sits on the C&O Canal Committee.
Okay.
So, because I know he has some thoughts and angles around, from the federal standpoint and looking at like the national parks.
Okay.
So,
Given the responsibility.
Okay.
Okay, anything else for the good of the order that you guys can think of? We just make sure an update on the holiday event, that's December 5th. Hopefully you've got it on your calendars. I've gotten already about 15 council members, and Mark Alberts is confirmed, so I think we'll have a pretty good turnout already, so. I've sent it out to about 50, almost all the people that we invited to our breakfast, so a lot of local folks will be there too, hopefully. So certainly if anybody asks if they can come, tell them they can, because it'll be fine, so. Okay, I think it's time to adjourn if somebody wants to make a motion.
So moved.
all right, I motion that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Thank you, Niles, I appreciate it.
All right, y'all take care.
What's the score of the game, Ed?
The girls tied. It was 2-2 overtime, double overtime.
Whoa.
That's exciting.
All right,
like a
the boys
Saturday
are
game.
next. All right, well, the boys' game starts in a little while if you want to see some soccer.
It's senior
All
night
right.
too, right?
I'll come by Burger from the
Take it easy.
concession stand.
Yeah.
All right, guys, back to work.
Thanks, Niles.
Bye.
Yep, thank
See you
you.
tomorrow.
Yep, see you tomorrow.
So I just want to re-offer, so if there's any meetings that you feel like you want someone else to